It was a quiet night on Earth when a strange occurrence unfolded, one that would alter the lives of 6 seemingly ordinary individuals forever. Each person, from different corners of the world, found themselves in the same position, awake, restless, and with an inexplicable sense of unease, though they had no idea why. They had no way of knowing that in that moment, they were all being pulled into something beyond their understanding. Mark Donovan, a mechanic from Chicago, had just finished working on an old car in his garage when the world around him seemed to ripple. A subtle vibration ran through the air, a hum that tugged at his senses. His heart skipped a beat as a soft, humming light illuminated the garage. Without warning, everything disappeared. The concrete floor, the shelves full of tools, the worn-out engine he'd been working on, vanished in an instant. At the same time, Maria Garcia, a schoolteacher from New York, was at home preparing for bed. She closed her eyes briefly before the same strange, unsettling sensation gripped her. Her breath caught in her throat, and before she could react, the world twisted around her. Her bedroom dissolved into nothingness, and she was sucked into an endless dark void, with no sense of direction or time. Across the globe in Tokyo, Takashi Sato, a struggling artist, was staring at a blank canvas in his tiny apartment when the room began to distort. The walls folded inward, warping with unnatural angles. His heart pounded as the floor beneath him vanished, and he, too, was pulled into the void. It was the same for all of them, though each was alone, experiencing the same inexplicable event in their own way. The last to disappear was Dr. Emily Fisher, a renowned astrophysicist in her mid-30s, who had been working late in her observatory in the middle of nowhere in the Nevada desert. She gazed through the telescope at the stars, noting strange anomalies she had been studying for months. But then the stars themselves began to shimmer unnaturally, and the very fabric of reality seemed to bend. Before she could comprehend what was happening, she felt herself being ripped away from her body. None of them could remember what had happened next. In a flash, they found themselves standing in an impossible space, one that defied everything they had ever known about reality. The vault. It wasn't a place they could identify. It wasn't anything they had ever seen before. The walls of the vault shimmered, pulsating with light that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. The air was dense and heavy, filled with a strange, metallic scent. At first glance, it looked like an immense chamber, but it extended endlessly, beyond what the human eye could perceive. The very fabric of space here twisted in ways that defied explanation. There were no doors, no windows, just infinite, gleaming walls that curved and bent into the farthest reaches of the vault. A voice echoed in their minds, alien, cold, yet distinctly intelligent. "Welcome, specimens. You are now part of something far greater than your simple existence. You will remain here until we have finished our work." Each of the humans gasped and scrambled to make sense of their surroundings. Mark, his hands shaking, turned to face the others, people he had never met before. They looked as confused and frightened as he felt. "What the hell is going on? Where are we? Who are you?" His voice cracked, raw from panic. Maria's heart raced as she scanned the group, noticing that there were more people than she had expected. 6 humans, all strangers to each other, all brought here by an invisible force. "I don't know, but we need to find a way out. Whatever this is, it's not normal." Takashi swallowed, his voice trembling. "This doesn't make sense. I don't understand what just happened. I was just at home. I didn't sign up for this." His eyes darted around, taking in the surreal, otherworldly architecture of the vault. Emily's calmness stood in stark contrast to the fear radiating from the others. She had been in many strange situations during her career in astrophysics, but this was beyond anything she could have prepared for. "I don't think we're on Earth anymore. At least, not the Earth we know. This place," she said, pointing toward the walls that shifted and folded like liquid metal, "is something different. Something alien." Then, without warning, they all heard the hum again, stronger this time, reverberating through their very beings. A series of doors, shimmering, translucent, appeared on the walls, one by one, opening and closing in what appeared to be an infinite loop. "It's no use. We can't leave," Dr. Fisher said quietly, her voice steady, though her mind was racing. "This isn't just some random place. It's a vault. A vault that exists beyond our understanding of space and time." "Then who brought us here?" Mark demanded. "And why?" Before anyone could respond, another voice, cold and mechanical, resonated in their minds once again. "The Zhyrix will observe. You will be studied. Your existence will be catalogued." The voice seemed to fade, as if it had come from everywhere and nowhere at the same time. A deep dread washed over the group as they began to understand the grim reality. They weren't just isolated in some ordinary prison, they were specimens. Captives in a cosmic zoo, their every move watched, analyzed, and dissected by an alien race with motives far beyond anything they could imagine. Takashi, looking more distressed than the others, stumbled backward. "We have to get out. We can't just stay here." Maria nodded, trying to keep her composure. "There must be a way." But Emily, who had been quiet, suddenly spoke with a chilling realization. "We are not the only ones here." It was true. They weren't alone. Beyond the translucent doors, strange shapes moved in the shadows. Creatures whose forms were not of Earth. Some of them resembled nothing familiar, their bodies contorted in grotesque ways. Others appeared to be made of pure energy, flickering in and out of existence. It was then that they realized they weren't just being watched. They were being catalogued, studied by the Zhyrix, an alien race that had been collecting species from across the galaxy for eons. And now, the humans were part of this collection. The group fell silent as the gravity of the situation sank in. They weren't just trapped in this vault. They were part of something much bigger, something that defied everything they knew about the universe. They had to find a way out. But more importantly, they had to survive. And as the group gathered together, they realized that their fight for freedom might not be a battle they could win on their own. They would need to understand what the Zhyrix truly wanted, and whether they could ever escape the vault of dimensions. The first step was survival, but as the days passed, they would come to realize that their struggle was far from over. Days, or was it weeks? Time had no meaning here. The concept of days and nights didn't exist within the vault. Every moment seemed stretched out, but the humans didn't age, nor did they feel hunger or fatigue. There was only an unending, shifting landscape of translucent walls, strange doors, and bizarre shadows lurking just beyond the light. They were locked in a place where the very fabric of time had lost its coherence. The group had no choice but to explore. Each time they ventured toward one of the many shimmering doors, it opened automatically, revealing another strange, almost incomprehensible environment. Some doors led to vast empty spaces, others to strange, alien biomes with flora and fauna that had never been seen on Earth. The walls of the vault were alive, shifting like liquid, constantly morphing and rearranging themselves. But each room, no matter how different in appearance, felt the same, cold, clinical, and oppressive. At first, the humans tried to communicate with each other, but it was clear that the language barriers were an issue. Mark spoke English, Maria Spanish, Takashi Japanese, Emily in her scientific jargon, and the others in their own tongues. But their words often seemed hollow, as if the very air they breathed muted their voices. "There has to be a way to understand them," Emily said one day, staring at a cluster of alien symbols that had appeared on one of the walls. They seemed to pulse in rhythm with the hum in the air. "I think these are some sort of communication devices, or at least, they're trying to speak to us. We just don't know how to decode them." Mark was growing increasingly frustrated. "I don't care about their symbols. I just want out. I'm done trying to figure this out." His hands were balled into fists. He had always been the kind of person who fixed things, not someone who sat around waiting for answers. Maria, however, had been trying to keep everyone calm. She had no explanation for what was happening, but something inside her told her that reacting with anger wouldn't help. "We can't just give up," she said quietly. "We need to learn, to understand." There's got to be something here that can help us. Their exploration was interrupted that night by a strange event. The hum that had been present in the background, almost a constant presence, suddenly grew louder and more erratic. The walls of the vault began to vibrate violently, and the room they were in was bathed in a brilliant, blinding light. The air seemed to grow heavier, and in the middle of it all, an unnatural stillness settled in. It was then that they first saw them. At first, it was only a flicker, a brief moment where the walls seemed to part, revealing shadowy, indistinct figures standing just beyond the light. The aliens, the Zhyrix, had been observing them this entire time. They were no longer content with just watching from the shadows. One of the figures stepped forward, its form rippling like liquid, its outline ever shifting. The creature's presence was almost impossible to comprehend, as if its very being existed in multiple states at once, and yet it was undeniably real. It was humanoid, but in a way that seemed more like a distorted reflection of a human being. Its body was partially transparent, filled with twisting patterns of light that seemed to pulse with life. There were no eyes, no facial features in the way humans understood them, only a vague, undulating mass where a face might have been. The humans froze, their breaths caught in their throats. "We are the Zhyrix," the voice boomed inside their minds, deeper and more resonant than anything they had ever heard. It wasn't spoken aloud, but it felt as though the very vibrations of their own thoughts were being altered. "You are specimens, catalogued, studied. This is your purpose now." The words echoed in their minds, growing louder with each repetition, until the humans were overwhelmed by the sheer force of the mental communication. Mark stepped forward, his voice shaky but defiant. "What do you want from us? Why are we here?" The Zhyrix did not respond immediately. Its form shifted again, as though the being was considering the question, testing the limits of its own comprehension. "Your species is unique, diverse, intelligent. Your instincts, chaotic, yet purposeful. We seek to understand what drives you." The voice seemed almost curious, as if the Zhyrix had just discovered something fascinating. "By isolating you from your own reality, we observe. We learn." Emily's mind raced as she absorbed the words. "You want to study us, for what reason? Why are we being kept here?" The Zhyrix's form flickered, and in that instant, it was as if the creature was examining her on a microscopic level, pulling apart her thoughts and knowledge, extracting information. "We seek the evolution of intelligence, a superintelligence that transcends space, time, and form, a being beyond all boundaries. You, like all species we collect, are a part of this experiment." Takashi was the first to break the stunned silence. "So, we're just lab rats to you?" The Zhyrix seemed to pause, as if the concept of lab rats was not something it could easily understand. The flickering of its form slowed for a moment, as if it was processing this idea. "Your analogy is close, but not entirely accurate. We are not cruel. We do not harm. We observe. We gather. We unite. Through the study of you and all the other species we have collected, we are creating something greater." The humans exchanged uneasy glances. What they had feared was true. They weren't just trapped in a vault. They were part of an experiment that stretched far beyond their understanding. The Zhyrix believed they could merge the consciousness of countless species to create something new, something capable of transcending the very laws of physics and reality. But it was more than that. The Zhyrix wanted to learn everything. How different species evolved, how they thought, how they interacted. They had isolated these species in the vault because they believed only by observing them in a controlled environment, beyond the influence of time and space, could they fully understand the potential of each race. Maria clenched her fists. "We're not just here for you to study. We're here to survive. You said you observe. Then observe this. We're not going down without a fight." The Zhyrix's form rippled in response, as if it found her declaration amusing. "Survival is part of the process. We will see if your species is truly capable of transcending your limitations. The vault is infinite. The doors are many. The challenge will be how long you can endure." And with that, the Zhyrix's presence faded, leaving the humans in stunned silence. The glow in the room dimmed, and the vault returned to its quiet, oppressive stillness. Emily exhaled, her thoughts racing. They think they can manipulate us, control us, but we can't let that happen. We have to find a way out. I agree, Mark said, his jaw set. But we need to work together. We can't afford to fall apart now. Maria nodded. This is only the beginning. As they gathered their thoughts, one thing became abundantly clear. The Zhyrix were not their only problem. Within the vault, in the endless stretches of space, there were countless species, and some were far more dangerous than anything they had faced on Earth. The humans weren't just fighting to escape the vault. They were fighting for their very survival in a universe they no longer understood. As the days, if they could still be called days, passed within the vault, the human group found themselves growing more and more accustomed to their new reality, though not without a creeping sense of dread. They had all encountered the Zhyrix, and their terrifying message still echoed in their minds. The vault was far more than a prison. It was a laboratory, a crucible for an experiment they didn't fully understand. They had been isolated, yes, but they had also been thrust into a dangerous and unpredictable environment where time had no meaning and survival was far from guaranteed. Despite the weight of the situation, they pressed on, determined to make sense of the vault's structure and, if possible, find a way out. Every now and then, a door would appear, shimmering as if it were an opening to another dimension. The doors didn't lead anywhere predictable, and sometimes the landscapes they revealed were eerily beautiful, while other times they were terrifying in their foreignness. The further they ventured, the more they began to notice a disturbing pattern. Every room, every dimension they entered, held strange and unfamiliar lifeforms, some of which seemed almost too alien to comprehend. One day, as Mark, Emily, and Maria cautiously explored yet another corridor, they stumbled across something unexpected. A strange, luminous object sat in the center of an otherwise empty room. It wasn't a door or a piece of equipment they had seen before. It was more like a glowing artifact, pulsing with an ethereal light, its surface shifting in colors that seemed to be beyond the spectrum of human vision. "What is that?" Emily asked, her voice barely a whisper, as though afraid the very act of speaking might disturb the object. "I don't know," Mark said, stepping closer, his curiosity getting the better of him. "But it looks like it's alive. Or at least, it's reacting to us somehow." Maria, ever cautious, moved back. "Maybe it's some kind of energy source. A trap, even. We can't risk getting too close." But before they could retreat, the object began to hum, a low, vibrating sound that resonated deep within their bones. The air in the room seemed to thicken, and the walls shimmered with ripples of strange energy. Without warning, a brilliant flash of light erupted from the object, temporarily blinding them. When their vision cleared, they found themselves no longer in the same room. Instead, they stood in a vast, empty expanse, a landscape stretching into infinity. The ground beneath them was smooth, almost liquid in texture, and the sky above was a swirling vortex of colors and patterns that defied description. There were no clear boundaries, no landmarks, only the overwhelming sense that they were now in a different dimension altogether. It's a portal," Emily said, breathless. "Some kind of transportation device." Mark stepped forward, looking around in awe. "What are we supposed to do now? We're not even sure where we are." Maria shuddered. "Wherever we are, I don't like it. This place feels wrong." They all sensed it. The overwhelming strangeness of the environment. Nothing here seemed familiar. The very laws of physics seemed to be distorted. The air felt both heavy and weightless, and their footsteps made no sound as they moved. Before any of them could take a step further, a figure emerged from the swirling vortex above them. At first, it appeared to be a shadow, flickering in and out of existence. Then it solidified into something they could understand, an alien creature, though one unlike anything they had seen before. It was tall, its form humanoid, but the skin was translucent, with veins of glowing blue light running through it. Its face was a smooth, featureless mask, but its eyes, if you could call them that, were like pools of black liquid, shifting and twisting as if they contained entire galaxies within them. The creature didn't speak. Instead, it raised one hand, and a series of symbols appeared in mid-air, floating and rotating as if suspended by some invisible force. Emily's mind raced. These symbols, they're similar to the ones we saw back in the vault, she said, trying to make sense of the alien language. But we don't know what they mean. The creature raised its hand again, and the symbols began to rearrange themselves, as if responding to her thoughts. Then, with a flicker of energy, a translation appeared beneath the symbols. You are in the transcendence zone. Time and space no longer apply here. We are the custodians of the vault. You are part of the experiment. The words pulsed with an otherworldly energy, and Emily felt a sharp sting in her mind as they were transmitted directly into her thoughts. She instinctively reached out for Mark's arm, but the shock left her shaking. What does it mean, transcendence zone? Mark asked, his voice trembling. It's where the boundaries between dimensions break down, Emily said, piecing it together. This is where the Zhyrix gather information about the very fabric of reality. They are trying to transcend physical limitations, to create that superintelligence they spoke of. Before Mark or Maria could respond, the creature flickered again, and suddenly, they found themselves back in the vault, back in the room where they had first encountered the Zhyrix. The artifact, now dim and inactive, lay in the center of the room once again, as if nothing had happened. What just happened? Takashi's voice broke through the stunned silence. He and the others had been waiting anxiously outside, worried when they hadn't returned. We were somewhere else, Emily said slowly. Somewhere outside of the vault. It's another part of the experiment. Mark clenched his fists. So the Zhyrix are trying to transcend reality by using us, by merging all these species together, creating something that can live outside of time and space. Maria shook her head, trying to make sense of it. And they're trying to push us to evolve, to become part of that, whatever it is. We have to stop them. But Emily's expression had darkened. I don't think we can. Not by ourselves. We've already seen the extent of their power. These creatures, these custodians, they control entire dimensions. They can move us, shift us, and manipulate us in ways we can't even begin to understand. As the weight of her words sank in, they all realized the truth. The Zhyrix were more than just observers. They were architects of reality itself. They weren't just collecting specimens for a single experiment. They were trying to build something far more dangerous and complex than any of them had ever imagined. And now, the humans were not just pawns in their game. They were the key. The realization hit them all at once, like a cold wave crashing over their collective resolve. They weren't just prisoners. They were an essential part of the Zhyrix's grand design, the catalyst for their experiment. The aliens weren't merely observing them. They were shaping the conditions for the evolution of a superintelligence, one that transcended the physical world. And that superintelligence could have powers beyond comprehension. But as overwhelming as this new truth was, it wasn't enough to break their spirit. The humans had something the Zhyrix didn't. A will to fight, a stubborn drive to survive, and, perhaps most importantly, a sense of unity in the face of impossible odds. Emily, Mark, Maria, Takashi, and the others gathered in the small, dimly lit room within the vault where they had first been placed. The soft hum of the vault resonated in the background, a constant reminder that they were being watched. But now, instead of despair, their minds were focused. How do we escape this place? Mark asked, his voice tinged with frustration but also determination. We know the Zhyrix are monitoring us. They control this whole damn dimension. But there has to be something we can do. We can't just wait for them to come to us, Maria replied, her hands on her hips. We need to take the fight to them. I agree, Emily said, her mind working furiously. But if we're going to do this, we need more information. We need to understand how this vault works, how the Zhyrix control it, and how we can use whatever weaknesses they might have to our advantage. Takashi paced nervously. We've seen some of the other creatures in here. Maybe some of them know something. If we can find a way to communicate with them, maybe they can help us. Emily nodded, thinking deeply. The vault is far more complex than we've been able to understand. But there might be a way to influence it. If the Zhyrix have built this place to study and observe, perhaps there's a flaw in their design, something they didn't anticipate. Maybe something that can disrupt their control over time and space. The Zhyrix know everything about us, Mark pointed out. I don't think they'd miss a flaw. Emily's gaze hardened. No, but we don't need to beat them at their own game. We just need to find something, anything, that they can't account for. They've been collecting species from across the galaxy for eons. But we're different. Humans are unpredictable. We have a way of surviving against the odds. Exactly, Maria added, her voice steady. And the Zhyrix can't control that. There was a brief silence as everyone contemplated what had been said. They were starting to grasp the gravity of their situation, but they were also beginning to see their first glimmer of hope. The Zhyrix were powerful, but they had underestimated one thing: the capacity for change within the species they collected. The aliens may have thought they could isolate them, examine them, and ultimately mold them into a tool for their larger experiment. But they had failed to realize that the humans, and perhaps some of the other species trapped in the vault, were capable of resisting, of evolving in unexpected ways. But to fight back, they needed to understand more about their environment. And so, they began their second phase of exploration, this time with a focused goal: to learn everything they could about the vault, the creatures in it, and the boundaries between the dimensions. Their first stop was one of the vast, empty corridors they had passed through countless times. The walls, which had seemed inert and unchanging before, now appeared to hum with an unnatural energy, as though they were alive, pulsing with information. I think this is it, Emily said, stepping forward with a sense of purpose. If we can manipulate the walls, control their shifting, we can create an opening or a rift. Something that could destabilize the Zhyrix's hold on this place. How do you propose we do that? Takashi asked skeptically. Emily smiled faintly. I'm not entirely sure, but I know one thing. Everything in the vault is interconnected. The creatures, the doors, even the walls themselves. I suspect the Zhyrix use some kind of energy matrix to maintain control over the vault. If we can tap into that, even briefly, it might give us an advantage. Takashi looked uncertain. But how are we going to tap into that? We don't know how it works. That's the problem, Emily acknowledged. But what we do know is that this place operates in multiple dimensions at once. It doesn't follow the rules of our universe, so we have to think outside the box. We're dealing with a form of energy or intelligence that's beyond our comprehension, but that doesn't mean we can't manipulate it. The group moved deeper into the corridor, searching for any signs of weakness, any clue that might reveal the Zhyrix's secret. They came across a doorway, one that shimmered and distorted in a way that felt almost alive. The symbol on the door, similar to the ones they had seen before, flashed briefly, then faded. The door swung open without a sound. On the other side, they found something different. This room was not like the others they had explored. It was vast, but it was filled with crystalline structures that seemed to pulse with light and energy. The air was thick with a strange static charge, and the ground was soft and uneven, like it was covered in a layer of thick, liquid sand. What is this place? Maria whispered, her voice filled with awe and dread. I think this is where the Zhyrix conduct their most sensitive experiments, Emily said, her eyes scanning the crystals. This is the heart of the vault. As they stepped closer, a low hum filled the room, and the crystals began to glow brighter. Slowly, the shapes within the crystals seemed to move, as if something, or someone, was trapped inside. The figures were humanoid, but the faces were distorted, like they had been warped by some kind of energy field. Are those other species? Takashi asked, horrified. Emily nodded grimly. They are. The Zhyrix collect species from all over the galaxy. They imprison them in these energy fields and use them as part of their experiments. Mark clenched his fists. This is what they do. They collect. They imprison. They test. But we can't just stand here and do nothing, Maria said urgently. We need to get out. And if these creatures are trapped in here, we need to free them, too. We can't let the Zhyrix get away with this. The group stood in silence for a moment, contemplating the enormity of the task ahead. Freeing themselves would be no small feat, and the stakes had never been higher. But one thing was clear. The humans would not let themselves be mere specimens in the Zhyrix's experiment. They would fight, and they would find a way to escape. But they needed a plan. And the vault, with all its secrets and dangers, was only just beginning to reveal its true nature. The room was silent except for the soft hum of the crystalline structures around them, which pulsed like the heartbeat of the vault itself. The humanoid figures trapped within the crystals seemed to watch them with hollow, empty eyes. Some of them had the same faintly glowing patterns as the Zhyrix, while others appeared completely alien, their bodies unlike anything the humans had seen before. Emily stared at the figures, her heart heavy with pity. These are the other species. They, prisoners just like us. Mark clenched his fists in anger. If we, going to get out of here, we need to figure out how to break those crystals. We need to free them too. Maria, however, was less sure. We don't even know what these crystals are made of. We could waste precious time trying to break them, and the Zhyrix might notice. We can, risk getting caught. We don't, have a choice, Takashi said, his voice determined. The Zhyrix already know we, here. They already attracted their attention. We can, afford to leave these people behind. Emily nodded, her mind racing. She knew they couldn't risk wasting time. Every moment they spent in this dimension, in this vault, the Zhyrix grew more aware of them, more attuned to their presence. And if the creatures within these crystals could help them, they had to try. But then, as if responding to their decision, the air in the room began to shift. A sharp crackling sound echoed through the space, and suddenly, the crystals began to glow brighter, their light intensifying. The figures inside them began to move, and for the first time, the humans saw the faces of the trapped beings. Faces full of anguish, as if they were aware of their plight but powerless to do anything about it. And then, with a sound that made the vault seem to tremble, the crystal housing the nearest figure shattered. The figure stumbled forward, collapsing to the ground in front of them. It was humanoid, but unlike anything they had seen before. The creature's skin was smooth and silvery, with faint iridescent markings running across its body. It had 6 arms, each ending in delicate, clawed fingers, and its eyes were large, almond-shaped, and completely black, like endless pools of liquid darkness. For a moment, the creature simply lay there, motionless. Then, slowly, it raised its head, and its black eyes locked onto the humans. It spoke, not aloud, but directly into their minds, the words forming in their thoughts. "You are not from this place." The voice was both distant and intimate, as if the creature was communicating from across a vast, impossible distance. There was an ancient quality to it, something that spoke of a being far older than anything the humans could comprehend. Mark took a cautious step forward. "No, we're not. We're human. We're trapped in this vault. We need to get out." The creature's gaze softened, and it slowly stood, its movements fluid despite its apparent weakness from being trapped in the crystal for so long. "I am Zhyrix. I was once like you, isolated, imprisoned." The creature's voice conveyed a deep sadness, and for a moment, the humans could feel the weight of its centuries-long captivity. Maria stepped forward, her voice steady. "You've been trapped here for how long?" Zhyrix's black eyes glowed faintly as it responded. "Longer than you can understand. Time does not flow the same in this place. The Zhyrix collect us from across the universe, from worlds scattered in countless dimensions. And we are kept here, studied, experimented upon. The Zhyrix believe they can create something greater by merging us. But they underestimate us." Emily furrowed her brow. "Merging us? What do you mean?" "The Zhyrix are trying to create a superintelligence. They've told us as much." Zhyrix's limbs twitched, and the room seemed to hum louder. It stepped forward and bowed its head. "The Zhyrix have told you only part of the truth. They believe they can combine our essences, our consciousness, to form something powerful, something that transcends time, space, and form. But they do not understand that in doing so, they threaten the very fabric of existence. Mark's eyes narrowed. What do you mean? What happens if they succeed? Arax's expression shifted, as if struggling to convey the enormity of the situation. The Zhyrix believe they can control this superintelligence, but it will be beyond their power. It will transcend them, and everything the Zhyrix have built will collapse. The balance of reality itself will fracture. We are not merely specimens to be studied. We are pieces of something much greater. If we are combined, we will create a force that even the Zhyrix cannot control. The humans exchanged uneasy glances. The implications of what Arax was saying were staggering. You're saying, Emily began slowly, that the Zhyrix are risking the destruction of reality itself? Arax nodded gravely. Yes, but they are blind to the consequences. They see only their goal, to create a being that can exist beyond the constraints of space and time. They believe they can control it, but they are wrong. Takashi took a deep breath, trying to digest everything. Then why have you been trapped here all this time? Why haven't you done anything to stop them? Arax's expression darkened. There is little we can do when our consciousness is trapped within these crystals. The Zhyrix have created a prison for us that warps our minds and limits our power. They believe we are powerless because of it. But they are mistaken. The room fell silent as the weight of Arax's words settled over them. They had always suspected that the Zhyrix were up to something far beyond simple experimentation. But now it was clear. The aliens had created a far more dangerous game than they could have ever imagined. We have to stop them, Mark said, his voice resolute. We need to break free of this vault, before the Zhyrix can finish what they've started. Arax nodded, its black eyes gleaming with an ancient knowledge. To break free, you will need more than just strength. You will need the power of unity. The Zhyrix believe they can control the species they collect, but they do not understand what they have truly created. The power of all the collected species, if you can harness it, can break the vault's boundaries. It can shatter the hold the Zhyrix have on this place. But how? Emily asked, her voice tinged with hope. How do we harness that power? Arax's gaze flickered with a strange, knowing light. You must unite the species. Find a way to break down the walls between your minds. Only then can you hope to escape. The key lies in the connection between you all. The Zhyrix think they can control us, but they fail to realize that we are more than the sum of our parts. The species they collect are diverse, but they are all bound by a common force. A force that even the Zhyrix cannot predict. The humans exchanged glances, the weight of Arax's words pressing heavily on them. If they were going to escape this place, they would need to do something far beyond anything they had ever imagined. They would have to unite with the other trapped species. They would have to tap into the collective power of all those imprisoned in the vault. But the Zhyrix were watching, and they would stop at nothing to ensure their experiment succeeded. The clock was ticking. The enormity of what Arax had said hung in the air like an oppressive cloud. The idea of uniting with other species, combining their minds and essences to escape the Zhyrix's grasp, seemed impossible. But in the depths of the vault, it was the only hope they had left. Emily, Mark, Maria, Takashi, and the others knew that if they failed to act now, they might never get another chance. Arax's words kept echoing in their minds. The key lies in the connection between you all. It was a riddle that didn't make sense yet, but they had no choice but to solve it if they were going to escape the vault and prevent the Zhyrix from achieving their dangerous goal. We need to find the others, Emily said, her voice firm with determination. We can't do this alone. If we're going to break the vault's hold on us, we need to reach out to the other species trapped here. They're the key. The group nodded, and with Arax leading the way, they set off through the labyrinthine corridors of the vault, now more focused than ever. Every step they took brought them deeper into the heart of the Zhyrix's dark experiment. The walls seemed to shift as they moved, sometimes expanding, sometimes contracting, making it impossible to tell whether they were moving in circles or venturing further into the vault's uncharted depths. But Zhyrix seemed to know where to go, guiding them through spaces where reality itself seemed to bend and twist. Eventually, they reached a large chamber, unlike any they had seen before. This room was vast, its walls stretching far beyond their view, lost in shadows. The ceiling above them was a swirling mass of dark, unrecognizable shapes, shifting as if alive. At the center of the room, a large platform hovered in mid-air, surrounded by swirling energy fields. In the center of the platform lay a complex structure, seemingly suspended in space, a strange fusion of organic and mechanical parts that pulsed with an eerie light. "This is it," Zhyrix said. "The Zhyrix's core, the heart of the vault. This is where they've been conducting their most dangerous experiments, the merging of species. And it's here that you will awaken the others." Emily looked around, confusion and unease filling her chest. "Awaken the others? How? What are we supposed to do?" Zhyrix gestured to the central structure. "This is the Crucible, the place where the Zhyrix combine the consciousness of different species, merging them into a collective mind. But they are incomplete. The Crucible only works when it has all the pieces, when every species within the vault is linked together." Takashi stepped forward cautiously, his eyes scanning the swirling energy fields around the Crucible. "So, you're saying if we link all the species together, if we connect them, we can stop the Zhyrix from creating this superintelligence?" Zhyrix nodded. "Exactly. You must bring them together. The more of us that connect, the stronger the collective consciousness will be. If you can awaken enough of us, we can resist the Zhyrix's control. And we can shatter the walls between dimensions, freeing ourselves and stopping their experiment." "But how do we connect with them?" Maria asked, her voice filled with skepticism. "We don't even know where to start. We've never done anything like this before." "Trust in the bond that already exists," Zhyrix said softly. "The Zhyrix underestimated the power of unity. They thought they could isolate us, treat us as separate, as individual pieces. But they did not understand that we are all connected by something greater. Something that transcends species, time, and space." Emily felt a strange sense of calm wash over her as Zhyrix spoke. There was truth in its words, a deep, universal truth that resonated in her soul. She couldn't explain it, but she felt it. She looked at Mark, then Maria, Takashi, and the others. There was a bond between them now, something forged in the fires of this impossible situation. "All right," Emily said, taking a deep breath. "We'll do it. We'll awaken the others. We'll connect." With that, the group stepped onto the platform. As soon as they did, the energy field surrounding the Crucible surged, crackling with a strange, otherworldly power. The air hummed with energy, and the walls of the chamber seemed to warp and ripple, as if reacting to their presence. Zhyrix extended its 6 arms, and the group followed suit, reaching out to the central structure. The moment their fingers touched the energy field, a jolt of electricity shot through their bodies, making them gasp. But the pain was brief, and soon, the connection deepened. A wave of consciousness flooded their minds, an overwhelming surge of thoughts, memories, and emotions from species they had never met. They could feel the suffering of those trapped in the vault, the fear, the confusion. But they could also feel something else, a deep, powerful will to break free, to resist the Zhyrix's control. It was the collective will of the species. And then, as their minds intertwined, they felt something shift within the vault itself. A crack, a small, subtle rupture in the fabric of the vault's reality. It was a flicker, almost imperceptible, but it was enough. "It's working," Emily whispered, her voice filled with awe. "We're connecting. We're waking them up." Suddenly, the Crucible pulsed with even more intensity, and the vault around them began to shake. The walls trembled, the floor beneath them vibrating with a low, resonant hum. The collective consciousness of all the trapped species was awakening, and with it, the vault was beginning to unravel. But as the power surged, a shadow moved through the chamber, dark and menacing. The Zhyrix had arrived. They were faster than the humans expected. From the shadows, they emerged, tall, terrifying, their glowing blue eyes burning with rage. The Zhyrix had been monitoring the crucible, and they knew the humans were on the verge of breaking their hold on the vault. "You should not have done this," one of the Zhyrix said, its voice cold and imperious. "You cannot stop us. You are nothing more than pawns in our game." Emily stood tall, her heart pounding, but her resolve unbroken. "You've underestimated us. We will stop you. We'll unite the species, and we'll destroy your vault." A dark smile twisted across the Zhyrix's face. "You cannot hope to defeat us. This vault is our domain, and we are its masters." But as they spoke, the vault trembled once again. The walls cracked and splintered, and the ground beneath their feet seemed to buckle, as though the very dimensions themselves were giving way. The collective consciousness of all the species was growing stronger, and the Zhyrix's hold was weakening. "You've lost," Arax said, its voice ringing with finality. "You thought you could control us, but you've only created your own destruction." The Zhyrix roared in anger, but it was too late. The vault was collapsing, its foundations disintegrating under the power of the united consciousness. And in that moment, as the vault shattered and the Zhyrix's plan unraveled, the humans knew this was only the beginning of a far greater journey. A journey where they would transcend the confines of the vault and take their place among the stars, free at last. The ground beneath their feet cracked wide open as the vault's walls trembled violently. For a moment, everything seemed to shift and warp in an overwhelming explosion of light and energy. Time itself seemed to unravel, bending and folding around them like paper crumpling in a cosmic storm. The Zhyrix, once towering and imposing, seemed to flicker and blur, their forms becoming more insubstantial with every passing second. The humans held onto each other, their minds racing with both terror and exhilaration. The vault was collapsing. Everything they had known was disintegrating. But in this chaos, there was a strange sense of freedom. "We're breaking through," Emily shouted over the deafening roar. The crucible, now glowing with a brilliant, otherworldly light, pulsed in sync with their collective will. Species from across the galaxy, those trapped in the vault for eons, were beginning to awaken, their minds joining together in one immense, vast consciousness. But the Zhyrix were not done yet. They might have underestimated the power of unity, but they were not going to allow their creation to escape them so easily. "You fools!" the leader of the Zhyrix hissed, its voice a deep, chilling echo that reverberated through the collapsing vault. "You cannot escape. You cannot destroy what we have built." Despite the Zhyrix's words, the humans could feel the vault slipping away from their control. The walls were no longer solid. They shimmered, flickered, and vanished into nothingness. The very fabric of reality was unraveling around them, and for the first time since their capture, Emily felt like she was truly free. "We can do this," Mark shouted, his voice filled with raw determination. "We have the power now. We're stronger than they ever thought." The collective consciousness, now fully awakened, responded in a chorus of thoughts. It was a strange, unfamiliar sensation, hearing millions of minds all at once, their voices melding into a single entity. The other species, Arax, the creatures from faraway worlds, those they hadn't yet seen, were all joining together in a grand, united force. And with that, the humans realized the magnitude of their power. The Zhyrix were no longer in control. The crucible, which had once been a prison for so many, was now a beacon of liberation. It was no longer a tool for the Zhyrix's twisted experiments. It was a symbol of their downfall. The leader of the Zhyrix shrieked in fury, but it was too late. The vault's collapse accelerated, the energy growing more intense, more unstable. The light of the crucible flared, bathing everything in a brilliant glow. And then, in an instant, the vault was gone. The humans were left floating in a vast, endless expanse. There were no walls, no boundaries, just infinite space, stretching out in every direction. They were no longer in the vault. They had transcended the dimensions they had known, leaving the Zhyrix and their twisted experiment behind. "Are we free?" Takashi whispered, staring into the infinite horizon before them. Emily's heart raced as she looked around. The space was unlike anything she had ever seen. The rules of physics no longer seemed to apply. The familiar stars and galaxies were absent. There was only an endless void, stretching beyond comprehension. "We're free," Emily said softly, her voice filled with awe and wonder. "But we're not just free. We're more. We've crossed into something else. This place, this new dimension, it's not bound by the same rules we've known." Arax, now fully united with the collective consciousness, spoke from within their minds. "You have transcended the vault, the Zhyrix, and the constraints of time and space. This is no longer just a dimension. This is the space between worlds, the infinite horizon where minds and consciousness can expand beyond any limits." Maria's eyes widened as she grasped the enormity of what had happened. "Wait, are you saying that we're in a place beyond reality itself? A place where there's no beginning or end?" Arax's voice resonated with quiet reverence. "Yes, this is the nexus of all existence. Here, you are no longer just humans. You are a part of something greater. You are part of the collective consciousness, the unity of all species." The Zhyrix's plan to create a superintelligence. They were on the right path, but they never understood that true intelligence cannot be controlled. It can only be experienced together. Mark stood still, absorbing Arax's words. "We're part of that now, aren't we? We're not just human anymore. We're part of something beyond ourselves. You are all part of something greater," Arax responded. "All of you. The Zhyrix saw your species as a tool, as just another experiment. But you are far more than they realized. You have the power to change the universe itself." For a moment, the group simply floated in the vast emptiness, the weight of their transformation sinking in. They had escaped the vault, yes, but they had become something else entirely. They were no longer just survivors of an alien experiment. They were now part of the very fabric of the universe, connected to beings from countless worlds, across countless dimensions. And then, slowly, the infinite horizon began to shift. Shapes and forms began to appear in the distance, fractals of light, distant stars, vast cities and landscapes made of energy, pulsing with life. The collective consciousness had created this new reality, a place where they could explore, expand, and learn without the limitations of the old universe. Emily felt a sudden sense of purpose. "We have to use this power. We can't just exist here. We have to make sure this doesn't happen again. We have to prevent the Zhyrix, or anyone, from trying to control other species like they did to us." Maria nodded. "We can build something new here. A new beginning. We can make sure no one else has to suffer." Takashi looked out into the vastness of the new reality. "We're not just going to survive. We're going to thrive. We're going to make sure that the Zhyrix's plans are never realized." The group stood together, united, as the infinite horizon stretched before them. The universe was theirs to shape, no longer trapped by the vault or the control of the Zhyrix. They had transcended space, time, and reality itself. And now, they would forge their own destiny. In the endless expanse, the humans, along with the countless beings they had united with, set off to explore the infinite possibilities that lay ahead. The vault was gone. The Zhyrix were defeated, and a new chapter in the universe's story was just beginning.